They'll last the entire time that the display is up for Orchid Extravaganza. Some of the other things you'll see as you walk down the center walk are these beautiful green cymbidiums. Again, a member of the orchid family, and you may recognize these from the floral industry. They last a long time, and they're also often used in corsage work. Some of the other things you'll see as you walk down the center walk is this little orange flower that we grow here. Samania is its name, and it's an example of some of the specialty crops we grow here at Longwood. We try to grow 70% of all the crops we use on display. The other 30% we do buy in. Now, with the case of Orchid Extravaganza, we do buy in the orchids from outside vendors, and that's because it just takes too long to grow them, and we don't have the facilities to do that. It's also one of the few displays at the conclusion we will sell all of the orchid plants because we don't need them. Now, as we walk down the center walk, you'll see in the distance our orchid curtain. So this has become something iconic for Longwood. It was made in-house by our metal shop. It's a series of gutters, and we put the potted orchids in there. We put moss in between them, and we actually run an irrigation system up through there. So that's 350 Phalaenopsis orchids that we use to create that particular display. The other thing you'll probably notice here is that the floor, the fern floor, which is normally flooded with water, is all set up with chairs. This is part of our active performing arts department. So we have a concert that'll be going on this evening, and you can always check the website for more information and get tickets for upcoming events. Next, I'd like to introduce Sam Hoadley. Sam is one of our very talented horticultural staff, and he's going to talk to you about his very specific orchid project.
Hi, I'm Sam Hoadley. I'm a senior horticulturist in the Outdoor Landscapes Division. I want to do a little bit of explaining about the concept and how we constructed these columns. The concept was to kind of have a green wall of orchids on a vertical surface to really display how these orchids would grow in the wild. And we were able to achieve this effect by hanging them on a repurposed metal frame. These frames were actually configured so it hangs onto these columns here. Each column has about 200 to 250 orchids that are all wired onto the metal frame. And I'll just point out some of my favorites that are in the column. This is a Miltoniopsis, really bright colors. The common name is the pansy orchid, for obvious reasons, due to its resemblance to the spring flower. Really bright colors, cool growing. And as a contrast, another one of my favorite orchids here is this dendrobium called Bruce Gordon. It has a lot of subtle details in it. And this is actually an easy plant to grow at home. You want it in a bright, sunny windowsill, a little bit drier conditions, but the flowers last 2 to 3 months, so that's really, really nice for the home grower. So another thing that we did, while we have a large variety of plants, we also repeated colors and hybrids throughout this display to give it a little bit of continuity. So I'll come back to Jim here. Jim, do you have any favorite orchids that are in the display?
Well, I do get asked that question a lot as to whether I have favorites. And I will tell you, one of the orchids that I'm drawn to are the Phalaenopsis. And these are the orchids that the homeowner can most readily get. They're available in big box stores. They're also very mass produced. But the thing about the Phalaenopsis is it comes in so many different colors that it lends itself to any kind of display work you want to do. It also is one of the orchids that doesn't mind being unpotted. It doesn't mind being turned upside down, and it lasts the entire length of the display. So it's really nice to have that. You can also find it in smaller versions. So you can actually get the flower size big, small, pretty much in every color except for blue. You know, there's very few orchids that even come close to that color. So anyway, thank you very much, Sam.
Thank you, Jim.
We are going to continue our tour around the main conservatory. And please, if you have any questions during this, let us know. We'd be happy to answer your questions about Orchid Extravaganza or about anything you've always wondered about Longwood. This is a very special time of year under glass because we can showcase some very unusual plants. As I mentioned, we're growing about 70% of our plants, and one of the special ones we grow is this Rolldana. Its common name is velvet groundsel, but the thing I think is most interesting about it, it's a cool grower, even though it's from Mexico. This is the time of year that it would flower, and it's pretty amazing that you can get a flower that can look you right back in the eye. So at 6 foot tall, it's a pretty big flower, but it also likes to grow in cool conditions, which makes it very, very appropriate for this time of year. As we walk down the walkway, you'll see there's lots of other interesting plants. Again, we have Cymbidiums featured in here. We have a planting bed of Syngoniums and Primula conica. The other thing this time of year, we can force all kinds of lilies. So just look at the size of that flower. Conchidor is the cultivar on this one, and the smell of the lilies is what you smell when you walk in the conservatories. So beautiful flowers. We get about 2 weeks display life out of them. So as I mentioned, we're only seeing a small part of the display. There are many more components to Orchid Extravaganza, and you can kind of discover them as you walk along through the conservatories. Another thing I'd like to point out, again, this is a Phalaenopsis, and look how we've made it into a basket of all of these cute little flowers. A lot of times, Phalaenopsis you cannot get by cultivar, you just have to ask for by color. This one happens to be an exception because this is so mass-produced, it's called Rin Rin. And so if we want Rin Rin, we can always ask for it specifically by cultivar.